How is government trying to meet these challenges? You mentioned some of their activity. Let's dig a little bit deeper on that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's happening at quite a few layers. So on the legal front, I do see that Bill C-11 came out last year. There's a lot of good discussions happening around that, and it deals a lot with things like having informed consent. What are some of the barriers and sort of regulatory requirements around algorithmic decision making, and what do businesses need to do with respect to their processes? How do we hold businesses also accountable, not just government accountable, with respect to dealing with data? And also, I see on the technology front, government, I think, is starting to take some baby steps around actually starting to do some implementations, digital identity being obviously a large one. There's also instances of looking at how do we break down silos within government. There's so much data that's within government already. So what does that digital transformation need to look like so that governments can deliver services better to citizens? And then, of course, just the public conversation that's happening around protection of our own data and citizen data as well, and commitments being made around transparency and digital rights. So I think there's kind of a bunch, probably three of those are kind of the big ones that I'm seeing, at least.
Right. Craig McClellan, what are you seeing out there?
I'm seeing good progress on the infrastructure. I think that, especially as I was alluding to earlier with the firefighting around COVID, we've got to the point now where people are starting to really invest proper amounts of time to understand what they're operating. We're seeing a much renewed focus around great data collection around telemetry and how things are actually working so they can identify problems earlier. So the technology aspect, I think, is well underway. And I would have to agree with Mai that while there's definitely improvements on the personal data protection front, the one area where I do think that there's opportunities for improvement is collaboration between all the various government organizations, not only across the federal government adopting similar standards, but also between different levels of government. Data that might be considered protected at the federal level isn't considered anything at the provincial level. Right. And as organizations want to collaborate on files across different governments, that sort of consistent data governance is going to be critical.
I'd like you to jump in on this too. What I experienced when I was a federal cabinet minister was everybody thought they were special and therefore did not need to collaborate. So are we starting to see a breakdown of that at least?
I think absolutely. I think, government is, I'm hoping, coming to that realization that collaboration is going to be key sort of in this next era of digital and data. There is absolutely no way that people can, remain in silos to be able to kind of deal with the challenges, and also kind of just looking at sort of economic growth. Digital and data really needs to be unlocked even within government, and that's going to mean these silos needing to be broken down. And to Craig's point, we're going to have sort of those governance standards, digital and data standards that are going to help us to sort of define, well, how do we do that? How do we talk to each other within government and with external businesses as well?
I'll ask you first. A lot of talk about artificial intelligence / machine learning. Is that our friend in this kind of endeavor, or is it also potentially a disruptor and an enemy?
Well, I've always looked at this as it's a tool. It's a phenomenal tool, but it's going to depend on how it's used. And so that's why, regulatory environment around how automated decision making occurs. What are the rules and best practices around responsible AI going to look like? They're going to be critical. AI is already being used. I mean, it's a tool that could be used for information warfare. There's manipulation currently happening with algorithms, in the private sector and potentially sort of bad actors. So this is now rising to the level of a discussion with respect to national security. So it is absolutely something that can be used for massive potential and growth, as well as some pretty bad stuff if we're not careful.
We'll return to these topics and more after the break. Stay with us.